Well, one thing we talk about all the time is understanding our own personal strengths, limitations, and where we need to be. So I've given up. I know my personal strength isn't to look better than John. So I came casual, and I'll take the part of answering the tough questions.
There you go.
And John can be the face of the thing for it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I'll try.
That's why you see John in our courses. No, but so we're talking about stress today, and we made a couple of assumptions that everybody here does know a little bit about DISC or personality. It's not really a session about DISC. You can sign up for something with John if you want to get the basic DISC. This is more about how you apply DISC into different situations. And one of the universal things today is stress management. And it was interesting to see people that signed up for this, and a lot of international people, from somebody that's with a recruitment agency that recruits in 32 different countries.
Wow, yeah.
Somebody is with the health ministry out of the UK. We have somebody from Switzerland, from Italy, from France.
Yeah.
And just everybody is doing something different, but the one thing in common is you're all managing situations where stress is affecting performance or hiring or well-being. It causes sickness, it causes turnover. There's so many things, and we always say, if you don't deal with stress, it will deal with you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Speaking of stress, Brad, do you want to go over a couple of definitions?
Well, you do the definition, then I'll give the real life example.
Yeah. Well, if you look in the dictionary, the first definition is a force exerted upon a body that tends to strain or deform its shape. Isn't that an interesting definition?
Yes.
And then the definition I think that relates more to us is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. Yes. So those are the two definitions of stress.
And it's different. Just like people are predictably different, what causes stress in people is predictably different. And I said, I'm the living example today. I wish I had this already recorded. I could have played for myself this morning on how to manage stress, because I was managing a bunch of it, and I'm the D style. So for me, a big problem can come my way and it doesn't bother me that much. But you give me 4 or 5 detail-oriented problems, because I'm not a C. Yeah. And I know I'm not the best. I can do it if I have to, but I hate it. And I'm not the most qualified. And I got up at 7:30 this morning and started thinking about this webinar. And I started getting these emails that were C-type questions. They were big nothings, but it stressed me out.
Yeah, yeah.
Having to think about that. So I was under that physical, mental, or emotional, because I would rather deal with the big thing than the little thing. Strangely enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then as I was getting ready, and this is how committed I was to this today, I had a fractured tooth. It's been fractured for about a year, and they didn't know how deep the fracture was. And when they stress test something like a golf club, it's not how hard you hit it one time. It's after you swing it back and forth a million times, does it break? Mm-hmm. And so the dentist said, I'll probably be good for a long time. Wouldn't you know, after a year, today is the day that it just broke through. I wasn't doing anything, but there had been stress on that for some time. And we find in the workplace, it's often like that. That's why, especially certain styles like S's and C's are people that tend to push it more down inside. And you see things that, day after day after day, and all of a sudden, some little thing just sets somebody off. Yeah. It's because there's been those stressors that have been pushed down, and it's ready to fracture. And one day something small causes it to fracture if you're not aware of that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so that's why this information is so important, right, Brad? Because one of the premises, the best way to deal with stress is, first of all, to be kind of aware of what stresses you. Based on your style, right? And we acknowledge that different types of people are going to be stressed by different things. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I already mentioned one, and we want this to be a little bit interactive, and you can type this or whatever. So I already said, as a D, that I want to get things done, things that slow the progress down, things that make me work with details, things that make me feel unappreciated for what I did. Those kind of stress me out. What about an I? Here's a cheat sheet that I think John has, but any I's out there, if you're that extrovert optimist, what are the things that stress you out? John, what stresses you out?
Well, not public speaking of all things, but I'm with you, Brad. All those detail oriented things, all those little details. Oh, you missed this, you forgot that. that's really what, the big stuff I'm okay with. It's all the small things that have to line up that sometimes stress me out. So,
well, I have somebody, I see Bob Pavlich is on the phone. Bob Pavlich is the CEO of a drug facility for detox for residence program, has 120 people in residence for up to a year, deals with stressful situations every day, bringing people in off the street, working with the prisons, but he is a high I. He is definitely a high I. And I talk to him sometimes and he'll tell me how great everything is going. And I'll say, Bob, this is me. Now tell me the real story. And because that I is so optimistic. What stresses you out, Bob? Besides me?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yes, Brad Smith is definitely number one on the list. 100% with my personality. Fear of rejection, not being accepted is something, and letting people down, trying to be a people pleaser and being stressed out when not being honest and trying to wear that mask. But once you take that mask off, it makes things a lot better. So just realizing who you are and not always having to paint the picture as super bright, that we all do go through struggles. We are stressed, and just getting to the point.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And managing stress. I happen to be on one of Bob's boards. So in some ways, I guess I am technically his boss, but I'm really not. He does it without me. But I know I learned a long time ago that was his high I style and John's.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by high I's, which D's like that, because I say, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Great cheerleaders. But I had to realize with Bob that his heart was always to please me. It was always to please the board. Like he said, the fear of rejection. So sometimes, I need to sit down and just say, look, it's okay. Just let's go over this, that maybe we can't do this, right? Or maybe we need to, it's okay. No, it's not going to make me happy, but it's not your fault. It's not my fault. Right. It's a situation we have to deal with.
Yeah, that's it.
And has that helped you, Bob?
Yes, 100%. Where not having that fear of rejection, and I think understanding setting the atmosphere before talking to me, because then I'm not trying to over explain or over talk, and then I know that it's not going to be letting you down, but it's detail oriented stuff that you don't want to get into. You just want the facts. So I understand when I'm dealing with me or different personality styles, I can't talk about how beautiful the weather is outside and I can't wait to get off work and go golfing, to try to paint it.
And as a D, I like to get the work out of the way before I talk about the fun stuff.
Correct, 100%.
Now, what about S's? There's a bunch of S's out there, but I tell you, just me asking you to say something is probably stressing you out, because S's don't really want to have to be the one out there in front. But Christian Dennis, you have a lot of S in your style, and it cannot be the same answer. I can't be the same answer for every question. That I'm the one that stresses you out.
Well, you keep asking the wrong people. But just so you know, we're getting some
okay, good.
I get stressed by impromptu tasks. That's definitely true. Not planning ahead. Not having control stresses this person.
Let me just say, the impromptu things and not planning ahead. Yeah, I kind of thrive on those.
Me too.
I have my week planned, and I think some of these curveballs that get thrown are really the interesting part. My wife is the opposite.
Exactly.
She doesn't have the time allocated. Sometimes she doesn't have the time allocated for me to come up and ask her a question.
Planning ahead stresses me out. I'm like, let's just go. Let's just see what happens. Look, I get stressed if I'm not getting my point across from a high I. Confronting people, I can see where that would be stressful as well. So yeah, we're getting some really good responses here in the chat window.
Okay, so S is sudden change.
Yeah.
Not feeling part of the team. Not being able to be a part of decisions.
Yep.
S's, one thing about S's is they don't want to be in charge, but they want to be a part of the decision-making process.
Good insight. Yeah.
And really, what we're trying to do here today isn't sell you on something. What we're trying to do here today is give you tools. Again, we're assuming, and from the response, that all of you are professionals. You're all doing something in behavior. You have an understanding of this. What we're trying to do is say, we like to partner with people and give you more tools to be able to sell your services, your disc. John and I were on a call with a client this morning that has an opportunity to get 1,600 disc assessments. I mean, that's a big order.
Yeah.
1,600. And They needed to use in a certain industry and hiring, and they needed to show certain validation. And so we got on the phone with our partner and helped answer these questions so they could get this order. And that's what we try and do. Is we are the largest customized behavioral assessment company in the world. We co-brand, we white label that. We do the validation, we do the research, but you guys are the ones making it happening. So we're trying to do this as tools for you to use and partner to take your business ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it looks like hurting somebody's feelings. I think you really were reaching out to the S's. So,
now that's us. Okay.
Yeah.
What style is Christy? Because what style? Because you know what? It's interesting because
ISC.
What?
She's an ISC.
Yeah. And you know what? So there's the S and the C too. But
Yeah.
you know, deep down inside, none of the styles really want to hurt somebody else's feelings. I mean, even with the D, they say Ds are great at conflict. I don't enjoy that. It's just that I don't fear it and I won't avoid it, but I don't enjoy it.
No, I don't think
Not at
anybody
all.
enjoys it at all. Yeah. So.
Believe it or not, I don't. Okay.
And
So you're saying there's good stress and there's bad stress.
That's right. Yeah. Believe it or not all stress is bad, right?
Yes.
So there is this thing called eustress, which has a positive effect on us. As a matter of fact, if you talk to most athletes or people, they can tell you, look, I'm in the zone, right? That's that perfect amount of stress. Now, there is this thing called distress. That's typically what we think of when we think about managing or mastering our stress, right? Is how do we manage that distress? And that makes us feel like we're overworked or overloaded or can't think. That's the stress that we're trying to.
And that's where self-awareness and knowing your team is self-aware, because I'll use Bobby as the example because I can see him in the video, and Bob works out all the time. He's in great shape. So if I went to the gym with him and he put 200 pounds on the bench press, that would be eustress for him because he's building it and wants to increase it. If you put that on me, it would be distress. Because I'm not at the same level, but understanding where people are in their emotional intelligence, where they are with their trigger points as a manager, as a boss. I got to know that putting the same load on John isn't the same as putting it on somebody else that works for me.
That's a good insight. Yeah. So here's kind of an illustration of what we were talking about. So right in the middle, that green area, that's the optimal stress, right? Because we don't want people to have no stress. Then they're undermotivated. They just don't feel like doing anything. And then again, when you get too much stress, then you feel like you can't do anything, right? And so we're talking about that middle strip right there, the optimal performance or that productive amount of stress.
Yes. By the way, thank you, Christy. Ds aren't always aware that they are hurting feelings sometimes. Please, if you're not a D, remember that. I wrote a text message last night to a friend that I haven't talked to in months, and he asked for advice, and I gave it to him, but in a very forthright way. And I was in my D mode, and I texted him back about an hour later and said, "Hey, how are you doing? How's the family? Sorry about that." And I realized that, this is a good friend, but sometimes Ds are so ready to help you, they forget about the relationship.
Yeah. It's really
thank you.
Very, very strong task.
And so we're looking at this. So what does happen if you don't have any stress at all? What happens to you?
Right. Well, it's, they say the only person without any stress are dead or in a coma, right? But you can see boredom, apathy, believe it or not, increased accidents. People just aren't paying attention. And so, there's a lot of negativity, dullness. You don't feel like, well, what's the
donuts? Did you say donuts?
I'm sorry, dullness.
Well, at least the donuts too.
Donuts, because stress eating. But people say, what's the use of going to work, or why should I even do this? You really don't want to be in that under stressed or non-productive stress.
So we see athletes, and Caitlin, that she's changing women's basketball. I got to admit, I had never been so excited to watch a women's sport or basketball as the finals there. It really got me interested. And, she's one, if you watch her, that she scores more in the fourth quarter, or no matter what she's doing, that when the pressure of the game and they're down, she comes to life. That's when she plays her best. That's her optimal performance.
Yeah.
So what with some of the other styles, what causes your optimal performance? With the D, sometimes a little bit of a challenge is a good thing. With an S or a C, maybe it's participating, listening, sharing ideas. I would ask Alicia, but I know Alicia likes to talk even less than that Bob, how do you get the most? Alicia runs a big part of the business down there for him. How do you get Alicia motivated? Now that you guys know your styles, she's the D, you're the I.
And it's funny, she just looked over at me and she said, I never even tell you good morning. I'm telling you what we're doing. She wants to throat punch people and just start going.
Just leave her alone, right?
And basically, it's she likes to challenge me, presenting her the facts, backing her up, not getting into the weeds, but the big picture, and letting her do her thing. And I know when she puts her head down and just gives me that look, that it's like, I'm in my D mode. Just leave me alone and let me get my work done. I don't want to talk to you. And I've realized that there's times we want to talk, but if I'm showing her the end result and with the goal, very goal orientated, detail orientated, and just let her work and do her thing, and she will get it done to the exact standard that we need.
And I know with S's, something that helps them, especially when there's change going on. When you have a meeting, I do this a lot with companies, with boards, and I always say you need to have everybody express their opinion, because I's and D's will do all the talking. S's and C's will look like they're on board or they're poker face, and they leave the meeting and say, boy, we didn't agree with anything, that's crazy. And meanwhile, the I's and D's thought everybody loved it, and they're off running to the races. So I make a point, especially if I know the person's style, that I want to go around the room and I want to ask each person's opinion of this. And what did you think about this? I want to give the S's and the C's the opportunity to talk, because they're not going to force themselves. I also realize with S's, they want to be a part. They want to talk through it. Like John said, they want to know why, when. C's, don't be too critical. I mean, you talk about brainstorming, John and I, if we throw 10 ideas out there and one of them's good, we high five each other. With a C, they don't want to be wrong. So sometimes pressuring them on the spur of the moment to come up with ideas. And I do that to Isa sometimes, that she's my right arm here, and I'll pour in a meeting and say, I just want you to come in and listen. And she'll be in 5 minutes, and I'll say, Isa, do you know this information? And she said, I hate being pulled in meetings with you, because there is always something you ask me, and I would like to prepare for that ahead of time.
Yeah.
So she isn't caught off guard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we're going to show you, and one of the things I would like to say is we are always looking for partners, that we are kind of the behind the scenes to a lot of different things that are happening out there, some very big things. And we love to be that behind the scenes partner. And some of our biggest clients, some of our biggest successes has actually come in through distributors or coaches or people like you that, they listen in, and one day they call and say, hey, we're doing something for Manpower, and they want to do it in 110 offices worldwide. Can you help us do that? That happened to us with one of our coaches. Can you help me with Lenovo? Can you help me with the Netherlands Postal Service? Can you help me with Mercedes-Benz? And on down the line.
Exactly. Yeah. So these are real life clients. Some cases where we specifically worked with stress management. Brad, it started with the Navy for us, didn't it? Yeah.
And by the way, at the end of this, we do actually have a certification and course in the stress management. And we're going to do something at the end, because I want to make it so that it's a no-brainer for anybody, because this is not about trying to certify you or this, it's giving you tools so that you can be doing these same things. If we did it, we can partner with you and help you do it. Yes, it started with the Navy that actually about 20 years ago, we got asked to go and do profiles on the men that were in the nuclear subs that went underneath the polar ice caps. And they would be down for months at a time. And, they were the ones in a case of emergency, they broke up through the ice, went back down. Very stressful. You're basically in a tin can with a bunch of other guys. Three guys share a bunk in shifts. And it's very, very stressful. And what they found is that actually in our disc, the second graph, which is the stress profile, that they could tell differences in people's daily work and how they responded by when they were moving towards that stress graph, even before they noticed it in the performance. So like for me, if I come in and my D is off the chart, I'm
Yeah.
I'm stressed.
Starting to
You're
get stressed,
you're a
yeah.
high I.
Yeah.
If you come in and you don't talk all day, we're ready to call 911 because something's going on
Yeah.
here. That's not John. But they actually use these subtle differences to detect stress levels for people on these nuclear subs. Then the Air Force Academy approached us and said, can you develop an assessment for each phase at the Air Force Academy? We want to train leaders in flight. And hey, this isn't like business. If you make a mistake, you lose a few dollars. We're talking about leaders that people's lives are on the line.
Yeah.
We have to communicate. We have to know how our people think. We have to know what they value. We need to know what motivates them. Our leaders need this, and we're still in there today. I mean,
exactly.
years later. So it really started with the military, but great training experience, had a lot of data.
Yeah, I think more recently we've looked into stadium security and crowd management, which is interesting, Brad. If you want to elaborate on that just a little bit.
Now, so we started working with the FBI and the DOJ and how to assess crowd situations. I'm on the board of the National De-Escalation Training Center, which does the training for the DOJ. And they watch videotapes from things like January 6th, from incidents that happened in schools, and try and apply that into the training. But we're starting to work with and talking to one of the world's largest private security force, 800,000 people.
Wow.
I mean, I was blown away that they're the third largest employer behind Walmart and Amazon. And it's interesting because they did a study about what stresses people out at stadiums. And number one is you don't get the seat you're assigned.
Yeah.
I understand you get behind a pool. But other than that, it's having a stress-free, having an environment where there's not a confrontation, having an environment where you're just there, relaxed, enjoying yourself. Next is a competitive game, and next is promotions.
Yeah.
But the number two thing is just to be left alone.
Yeah.
And with the security, one incident is too many. And it's learning how to work with people, how to communicate. It's the stadium experience. It's interesting. They do security, but they call it the stadium experience, because if they do it right, it is a good experience.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, we've worked with classrooms and education for a long time, but it's only more recently that we've looked at this stress aspect as being more and more relevant, right?
Well, we've been doing education for a long time, and I don't know if they're on today. I had the privilege of talking to somebody from the Sandy Hook Project that we were just discussing one day about a great organization, and they're actually going out and working with school districts and communities that have had tragedies or violence, and it's just they're doing such a good work. And but even the people that work there, it's very stressful. I do with social services, childcare, and it's very stressful for the workforce, the workers, that when you're going out and you're dealing with children that have been abused or hurt, and stress takes its toll. And I work with a big social service agency that self-insures. They have 600 social service workers, and they self-insure. And they've noticed that since the pandemic, that their own insurance costs have gone through the roof. Their costs for prescription medications, for depression drugs, for anxiety drugs. People are not dealing well with it. For treatment for alcoholism, Bob can tell you that his door is always somebody there, and it's gotten worse. The more stress, the more people look to things that don't relieve the stress but cause more problems. And so we love working with organizations where we feel we're actually a part of what you're doing, and we have great partners.
Yeah, great
partners.
Speaking of which, you'd mentioned earlier, Brad actually sits on the board of the National De-Escalation Training Center, and the FBI, the Department of Justice. A lot of these people have really come to recognize that stress and reducing or managing stress is a big part of being an effective FBI agent, local police officer. Incidents of injuries and absentee have gone down when they've implemented these things. So I don't know. Can you share a little bit?
Well, a real quick example. The tragedy in Texas with the shooting, where all the kids were massacred, and where people stood around doing nothing. And unfortunately, there was a breakdown in leadership from the very top. But the majority of the officers and the people that responded were that highly compliant style, that they want to be trained, repetition training. They want to know what to do. They don't want to make a mistake. And sometimes the fear of making a mistake will cause them not to take any action.
Yeah.
And through the hearings and everything, you see the reports, basically the leadership broke down, but the other officers and people that were involved weren't necessarily charged because they found there was a total lack of training, that they weren't trained. They didn't know what to do. And so but knowing that style and the style of most of your police force wants the repetition training, wants to have scenarios, wants to know, and to know where their parameters are, at what time can they take action. And it was interesting there, the Border Patrol was the one that actually went in and finally did something, because that group is used to having to kind of just do their own wing it.
Yes.
That they just saw a problem and went in.
With it. Yeah.
But there again, just training, understand people, understand their motivators, understand what their fears are. So everybody has a trigger point too.
Yeah.
That for a D, a trigger point is being taken advantage of. Not being respected. If I'm in the stadium and I go up to somebody and look at their ticket, and it's just a ticket, but they spit in my face, I'm probably going to punch them. That's the wrong thing to do.
Yes.
That is not the action. That's why you would not put me in that position. And I have a friend that does this, and he said it's crazy because they will go down there and they will take people that they know will never deal with a conflict and put them in areas that they're going to have to deal with conflict.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why they have high turnover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile, there'd be great people down taking tickets and greeting guests and stuff. So,
yes.
it's just knowing your personnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We talked about social services.
Yeah. But also, substance abuse and recovery services.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned too that they kind of go hand in hand, that as people are experiencing more stress, that we actually end up getting more work with these types of clients. This next one I want to bring up is a little bit interesting. This is the retail and customer service. And anybody that's worked retail knows that that dealing directly with the public can be very stressful. We actually, Brad, if you remember, we had a client that owned gas stations,
Mm-hmm.
and as part of the gas stations, they would have these convenience stores.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a lot of what we did was to help those managers of those stores recognize some of the stress triggers, not only in themselves, but in their employees, so they're not going in already stressed.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a huge difference. So yeah.
So where else before you do this?
Yeah.
So we're talking about applying this to stressful environments,
Mm-hmm.
high stress jobs, people where they have to de-escalate. So tell me some more jobs, careers, areas where you find these types of jobs. Don't go forward yet. Give me some ideas of where you think high stress jobs are.
Again, feel free to use that chat feature. Would be the lower right hand.
Go to medical, nursing.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's a great one during the pandemic and even now beyond. All type of security, all type of it's
project management.
Project. I love Christy. Spring break tourist areas. Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, hey, what about on campus security right now?
Exactly.
John, your daughter goes to Brown. She goes to Ivy League. I haven't seen, but here's these Ivy League schools dealing with things besides education and construction.
So.
Fast deadlines, construction. Actually, if you think about it, I can't think of too many jobs today that isn't high stress.
Exactly.
That things have changed so much in the world since the pandemic. People are being managed remotely. There's less personal interaction. You can barely get somebody on the phone. It's very frustrating. Fast food. Yes, that's, I mean, any retail. Preschool. Hey,
yes.
You won't. I actually have a 5-year-old son, and he is ready to go to kindergarten. And yes, I can attest. I have a 32-year-old daughter, but I have a 5-year-old son, so I can attest that can be stressful.
And I mean, I remember being a coach for the tots, And it wasn't so much the kids, a lot of times it was the parents.
Oh, yeah.
Dealing with the parents.
Especially in
becomes very
sport.
stressful. Yeah.
Especially
So,
in
yeah,
sports.
for what's supposed to be a fun league, right? A
Mm.
fun, nobody's keeping score league. Yeah, we're dealt with a lot of parent issues.
So to bring it in for a soft landing here, and
Yeah.
we'll stay on. I know some of you have time crunches. Thank you. Thank you for the international people that came on, because I know, the time zones are, you're up late at night or early. And so we will stay on. We can, we actually have some questions already, some great questions. You might want to hear the answers to these, but I want to follow up. Here's some questions. And again, if you had to wrap this up and you had to put it in a basket of, okay, what are some of the first steps?
Right.
Because, okay, number one, know your own style.
Yeah.
Number one, self-awareness. And that's where we start with every organization. And we usually start with management. Be self-aware. Know who I am, what stresses me out, what my trigger points are. The self-awareness and being able to identify the other person's style.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like with Bob or John, I have to know that they want to do their best. But, so when I see that maybe it's not being communicated, I got to remember their value system, though, says I want to do it the best. And I would rather work with somebody motivated and train them than somebody already trained that isn't motivated.
Yeah. Good point.
It's
exactly
much
right.
easier. Yes. So know yourself, know others.
Yes.
Then you have to know the people around you.
Yes.
That right there is the majority. Then start working, and we on our platform we have ways of showing which styles match better, and being able to see if it's a natural red, green, just matching it up and knowing your team and how to manage your team. And then once you have that, it's much easier to adapt and work with the public or work with other people.
Exactly.
So so let's see questions. Using this to help stress, is there a certain personality more prone to stress levels, higher potentials? Well, I found out that, they say D's aren't prone to stress. These are the ones that create the stress. so D's can be very good at creating stress. And it's funny because Alicia is a D. And actually, sometimes when I get stressed, that's when I start to growl and start to, and you know what? It's almost like, I think it's my defense mechanism to just everybody leave me alone so I can just get this thing done.
Yeah.
And I know that's how you feel, Alicia, is just leave me alone, let me do my job. And sometimes you're smarter. You just shut your door and lock it. Sometimes I growl and then I got to go back and say, I didn't mean to growl. It's just trying to get stuff done. S's and C's are very prone to higher stress levels, because I seem to have 100 ways you blow off steam. You go out and laugh, you have a good time. But actually, S's and C's will stay in a bad relationship longer. They'll tolerate abusive situations longer because they're very loyal styles. They're slower to change because they want to weigh all the options. And oftentimes, that's why you'll see with an S and a C, that sometimes all of a sudden something little, just all of a sudden they start telling you stuff that happened 10 years ago that upset them. Bob, that you work with some C's, and you're talking about something that happened yesterday, and the next thing you're talking about something that happened 3 years ago. And the I doesn't even remember what happened. It's like, are you kidding? I don't even remember being there. And yet, because the C's kind of compartmentalize that, and they don't tend to be very vocal, and they don't tend to I's kind of wear their emotions on
their sleeves.
Hey, it's interesting. The DOJ has studied this for 15 years, and they went from the styles that you most have to fear to the styles you least have to in confrontation. So what do you think the number one style is? I think you already know it.
I have a guess for sure.
But you know what? They found that if you take somebody that's a D or somebody that's a leader and you work to get them to your point of view, they'll be the first ones to help de-escalate things. You have to, and that's where understanding the values. If I'm a D and I've got an agenda, and my agenda is to cause problems, but if I got a D and I have an agenda and I realize that this is not the way to bring the results I want, I'll listen. But you got to appeal. Second style that you have to worry about. This was
I mean,
a surprise even to me.
I would, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to guess eyes.
Well, you know the answer.
Oh, well,
Jeez. Now that's an I thing. I know the answer. I helped develop the course, but I'm going to answer. John, we're going to give. Good job.
It
John.
worked. It worked.
Good job.
Exactly what I wanted.
No, it's funny because the eyes just join in. It's like even
They're
with the
instigators. Yeah.
no, not instigators as much as just join in.
Yeah,
I mean, hey, we're going and we're going to protest. And you know what? They get caught up in the moment.
Yeah, very much. So,
I've seen you get caught up in the moment, and I'm John. What are you cheering for here? And it's like, oh man, you're right.
Yes.
And S's are peacemakers. So and it was funny because they said the D's and the I's and S's they're the ones that'll follow the group, but when they realize this isn't something they want to be a part of, they will leave very quickly. And they said the C's are basically at home writing letters and documenting things. They're not even there. They're not wasting their time. They're writing the letters and getting things done that way. So it's just very interesting in how they different categorized it. And there's a different approach to each style.
Yeah.
A different approach. Here's a good question. I'm beginning to work, and this is where it applies everywhere. I am beginning to work with pre-retirees and recently retired women, 55 plus, who are undergoing a lot of internal stress and lack of well-being. What works best to support these women as a retirement transition coach? It's interesting because a few years ago, we worked with American Business Women's Association.
I remember, yeah.
And we went and did a conference, and it was for business women, and we were certifying them in our materials. And my impression was this was for young entrepreneurs, women business owners that they wanted to give tools to. And we went total opposite.
Yeah.
It was the same age group. It was like the 55 and older people that had been in business, people that had retired or transitioning, and they felt like they still wanted to be needed. They still wanted, and what they did was they were certifying people in the DISC and some of these tools, and they were helping match through the American Business Women's Association, ABWA, and you can check them out. They were matching some of these retirees with the younger executives to help do coaching and help do mentoring. And it really helped the women feel a part of things. And some of them even got some consulting jobs out of it because, but it really helped them feel needed. And, today it's with the generational gaps. My generation, we did things a certain way. You communicated in person, and these were your work ethics and your values. And you got one good job and you worked there 20 years. Now, it's, you younger generation, 50% at any given time are looking for their next job.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it really works. Great question.
Yeah.
So, and a matter of fact, if you want to follow up or write us, I can give you a little bit more information about the ABWA. How do you help your team in managing stress? I stay home.
And there we go. And thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to leave on that high note, but genuinely, we do appreciate your
if
time.
There's more questions.
Yeah, if there's more questions, and we're also available by email too. So, feel free to reach out to customer service. But we thank you for your time. We're going to go ahead
and I am looking for partners that if you have an inroad, we talked to somebody this morning that the 1,600 assessments, it was for something I would have never thought of, in a million years.
Yeah.
But people call me and say, what about this? Or what about this? And it's like, you know what? So if you're out there and you have something you're working with, an organization or a group, or you have your own niche that this behavioral piece, drop us a line, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
The Navy has their own assessment. Manpower has their own assessment. Microsoft has their own assessment.
Yeah.
I argued with somebody at Keller Williams the other day that they had their own assessment, and it was our DISC.
Yeah.
and I'm saying, and I said, you're right. They have their own assessment, because that's our job, is to make it look like it is your assessment.
That's exactly right. So we do want to hear from you guys. Again, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know it's valuable, but we're going to try to do this a little more often. We will let you know when the next one is. And again, stay tuned. We are going to repost this once we get a chance to get the recording up online. Yeah. All right. Again, you guys know how to get a hold of us. Again, we appreciate you for joining us today. Brad, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, everybody.